I didn't catch my wife in bed with someone else. I caught her smiling at a phone like it was a secret she deserved. I'm 42, American, the kind of guy who believed in showing up, work, respect, consistency. Like those were bolts you tightened on a marriage until it couldn't shake loose. On paper, we were clean. 12 years together. 2 kids who still ran into my arms like I was the safest thing they knew. A house with a yard that I mowed in straight lines because that's what I do when the rest of life gets noisy. Neighbors who waved. Couples who asked us where we found the time to stay so solid. My wife and I built it from the usual place. College plans and cheap apartments, late-night talks over takeout, the kind of hope you can only have when you haven't been tested yet. We weren't flashy. We were reliable. I liked that. I trusted that. Then she took a job at a marketing firm that ran hot. Big clients, loud deadlines, constant wins, and pressure like those words were badges. At first I was proud. She looked sharp leaving the house. She sounded energized on calls. She started moving faster, talking faster, like her thoughts were always half a step ahead of the room. The shifts were small. That's why they worked. Dinner got pushed later. Just this week. Wine showed up more often. It helps me come down. Her phone stopped living on the counter and started living in her hand. And there was a smile. Not the smile you give your kids when they say something dumb and sweet. Not the smile you give your husband when he's trying. This one was private, quick, contained, like she didn't want it seen. Like it belonged to someone who wasn't in the room. I noticed. Of course I did. I'm not stupid. But I was invested. So I rationalized it the way responsible men do. Stress. New environment. Office culture. A season. I told myself it would level out once she got her footing. I told myself a good marriage doesn't break because of late nights and a little distance. Truth is, I didn't want to name what it looked like. Because naming it would mean admitting something worse than work was pulling her. It would mean my marriage was drifting, quietly, confidently, without asking my permission. And I wasn't ready to accept that a life built on consistency could still be undone by a change in air. You can tell a lot about a person by who they start quoting. Her new best friend at the firm showed up in our lives the way problems usually do, through laughter first. Older woman, big voice, big opinions, the kind of energy that fills a room and makes quieter people mistake it for confidence. My wife started mentioning her constantly. Dana says, Dana told me? Dana thinks it's wild how people live like this. At first it was harmless. Office bonding. I'd nod while cleaning up dinner plates, half listening, because I wasn't trying to compete with her work world. Then the language changed. Marriage became something Dana joked about, like it was a sitcom. Dana says monogamy is a social script. Dana says women hit a point where they either choose themselves or disappear. Dana says men get comfortable and expect loyalty like it's automatic. Those weren't my wife's words. Not the woman I married. My wife used to speak like someone who took vows seriously, not like someone rehearsing lines from a podcast. Then the attitude came with it. Subtle first. She'd interrupt me mid-sentence like I was a commercial. She'd roll her eyes when I mentioned schedules, the kids' routines, the normal boring stuff that keeps a family stable. If I asked where she'd been, she'd answer like I'd accused her of a crime. I'm allowed to have a life. That sentence showed up a lot. Like a shield. Like my presence was a limitation instead of a partnership. And the thing about Dana, she didn't destroy anything directly. She just taught my wife to stop respecting it. She normalized chaos. Making bad decisions sounds like growth. Made boundaries sound like insecurity. She called it self-discovery with a straight face, and my wife started saying it the same way, like she'd earned the right to be reckless because she worked hard. I tried to stay out of it. I didn't want to be the jealous husband cliché. I didn't want to interrogate her friendships or act like she needed permission to exist. So I swallowed things. The nights she came home buzzed and talkative, but not with me. The way she'd step outside to take a call and come back smiling like she'd been fed. The way our conversations turned into logistics, kids, bills, weekend plans, while anything real got deflected. A third presence started taking up space in our home. Not a person physically, more like a new set of rules, new values, A slow drip of boundary testing, one small disrespect at a time. And the worst part? I could feel myself being demoted. Not with an announcement. Not with a fight. Just a quiet shift where I went from husband to background character. Useful, predictable, easy to ignore. I told myself it would pass. Men tell themselves that right up until it doesn't. Santa Cruz was supposed to be a reset. Perfect Saturday. Sun out, no wind worth complaining about. The kids tore across the sand like they were escaping school, laughing hard enough that strangers smiled. My son started building a fort like it was a military operation. My daughter collected shells and kept bringing them to my wife like she was presenting jewels. For a while, it looked like our life again. We had a blanket down, cooler tucked behind it, the kind of normal scene you take a picture of to prove you were doing it right. My wife wore sunglasses and that relaxed smile she used to have when she wasn't performing for anyone. Then I saw him. Not a stranger. Not random. He walked up like he belonged there. Confident, tan, mid-30s, fitted shirt, expensive watch that said more than it needed to. My wife stood up before he even reached us. "Hey," she said, voice bright, too bright. She introduced him as a real estate client. Like that was supposed to explain why he knew her first name and leaned in close enough to smell her sunscreen. They talked like they'd already talked today. He laughed. She touched his arm. Quick, familiar. I stood there holding a plastic shovel my son had handed me, watching the scene tilt sideways. Then my wife turned her back to him. "I missed a spot," she said, and handed him the bottle. He didn't hesitate. He didn't act awkward. He didn't look at me for permission because men who respect other men at least glance first. He started rubbing sunscreen into her back slowly, too slow, like he was taking his time with something he'd done before. His hands moved like he knew exactly where she liked pressure. My wife closed her eyes. That's when the confusion burned off. There are moments where your brain stops offering excuses, where the story you've been protecting collapses under its own weight. I felt it in my chest first, cold and tight, then in my jaw when I realized I'd been standing in the sun like an idiot trying to pretend this was normal. I stepped forward. "Stop," I said, not loud, just firm. A boundary, a basic one. My wife snapped her head around like I'd embarrassed her in front of her friends. "What is your problem?" she said, volume high enough for nearby families to turn. I didn't raise my voice. "You don't have another man touching you like that." She laughed. Actually laughed. Like I told a joke. Then she turned it into a theater. "Oh my God. Here we go. You're controlling. You're insecure." The guy held up his hands like he was innocent, like he'd been invited into our marriage by accident. He smirked. Not even subtle. People stared. My kids paused mid-play, sensing the temperature shift the way kids always do. My wife kept going, voice crisp, practiced, like she'd rehearsed this argument in a mirror. "Can you not do this here? You always have to make everything about you." That's when the humiliation hit. Not because strangers were watching. Not because she was making a scene. Because of how comfortable they both were. Because of the confidence that comes from repetition. I looked at her and realized this wasn't a first-time mistake. This was a routine that had finally gotten sloppy. And at that moment, the beach stopped being a beach. It became a stage where my wife chose to disrespect me publicly, because she believed she could. And she believed that because she'd been doing it for a while. I didn't argue on the sand. Not because I was scared, because my kids were right there. I crouched next to my son, helped him shake sand out of his bucket like nothing was wrong. I handed my daughter her towel and told her we were heading out early. I kept my voice steady. Keep it normal. That's what fathers do when adults decide to be stupid. My wife followed us back to the car in a storm, sunglasses still on like they were armor. The real estate guy stayed behind, watching like he'd just won something. I strapped the kids in first, checked buckles, made sure they had snacks, made sure they were looking at cartoons on a phone instead of our faces. Then I got behind the wheel. The second the doors shut, she started. "You humiliated me." I stared forward and pulled out of the parking lot like I was leaving any other place. "You let him touch you," I said. "He's a client. God, you're unbelievable. You're acting like some jealous caveman." There it was. The script. Dana's language polished and ready. I didn't bite. I let the silence stretch until it made her uncomfortable. Then she shifted tactics. You've been controlling lately. You watch me. You ask questions. It's suffocating. I almost laughed. Because if she'd known me, really known me, she'd understand. The moment my voice goes calm isn't peace. It's the end of pleading. You're not turning this around on me, I said. She scoffed. So what, you're going to punish me now? You think you own me because you pay bills? The kids were in the back. I could hear my daughter humming to her show, unaware. That fact was the only thing keeping my hands steady on the wheel. My wife kept talking. Faster, sharper. Throwing labels like they were weapons. Insecure, controlling, paranoid, toxic. Words designed to make me react so she could point and say, see, this is why. I let her spend it. Then I said one sentence, flat as a wall. This marriage is over. It landed in the car like a door closing. Her head turned toward me so fast I could feel it. What? The word came out thin. I didn't look at her. You heard me. For half a second, the panic broke through. Just a flicker, like she'd expected a fight. A negotiation. A long emotional conversation where she could twist things and buy time. But I wasn't bargaining anymore. She tried to recover. Don't be dramatic. You're always so. Enough, I said, still calm. When we get home, you're leaving for the night. She laughed, but it was shaky. You can't tell me to leave my house. I can, I said. And you will. Not because I'm trying to hurt you. Because I'm not letting the kids watch their family unravel in the same rooms where they're supposed to feel safe. She opened her mouth to argue again, but I cut it clean. You can call Dana. You can call your client. You can call whoever you've been smiling at. But you're not staying here tonight. We drove the rest of the way in a hard silence. And for the first time in months, I could breathe, because the part of me that kept trying to save a drifting marriage finally stopped pretending it still had a say. I work in cybersecurity. Not the movie version, no hoodies, no magic keyboards. Real work. Patterns, logs, permissions, the boring truth behind everyone's loud confidence online. That night, after I got the kids fed and settled, I didn't pace the house or send angry texts. I went into my home office and closed the door like it was a job. Because once you've seen what I saw on that beach, you don't guess. You verify. We'd always shared certain systems. Family photos, device backups, calendars, normal married couple overlap. She'd gotten careless over the years because most people do. They live like consequences only happen to other families. I didn't hack anything. I didn't need to. The trail was already there. Old syncs, forgotten folders, timestamps that didn't care about her new vocabulary. Messages that didn't read like coworkers. Photos that didn't belong in a professional thread. Locations that lined up too cleanly with her late nights. And transactions, small at first. The kind of amounts people think don't matter. Then they added up. Dinner tabs, hotel charges, ride shares at times that didn't match any work event. Little justifications disguised as routine spending. And the worst part wasn't the spending, it was the rhythm of it. Steady. Confidence. Like she'd been siphoning from our life the way you skim off the top of a fund you think no one audits. I sat there in the glow of my monitors and felt something hard settle in my chest. Not heartbreak. Accounting. I exported what mattered. Organized it by date. Built a timeline. Clean and simple like a case file. No drama, just proof stacked in order. Then I opened our bank app and did what a man does when he realizes the house is on fire. I froze what I could. Moved what I could. Cut off access to the joint accounts so the bleeding stopped right there. Her phone started blowing up my screen within minutes. Missed calls, angry texts, then more calls. The escalation was predictable. People don't start with confession when they're caught. They start with outrage. Why is my card declining? What did you do? Are you seriously trying to embarrass me? I didn't answer. Not yet. Silence makes liars talk. It makes them over-explain. It makes them reveal what they think the real problem is. And she did. The more she spiraled, the clearer it got. She wasn't texting like a wife who'd made a mistake. She was texting like someone whose access had been revoked. Like I'd shut down a privilege she assumed was permanent. I saved those messages too, because I wasn't collecting pain. I was collecting leverage. And somewhere between the last exported file and the last locked account, I understood something simple. She'd been living like the marriage was a stage and I was just the set crew. That ended in my office with a folder named in plain English and a man finally choosing facts over hope. She called at 6:12 a.m. I was already up. Coffee. Kids' lunches half done. My mind was calm in that way it only gets when the decision's already made. I answered on the second ring. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she snapped. "My card got declined at the coffee place. Do you know how that looked?" I stared at the sandwich bread like it had done something to me. "You're worried about optics. Don't do that. Don't act smug. You can't just freeze everything. That's my money too." "It was our money," I said. "Now it's evidence." Silence. Quick inhale. Then anger again, louder. "You're trying to control me. This is financial abuse." I didn't react. "Over the last 4 months, you moved a little at a time. Same days of the week. Same merchants. Same gaps right after late nights. Total is 23,400 and—" "Stop." Her voice wobbled, then sharpened. "You're making numbers up." "I'm reading them," I said. "I have dates, receipts, locations. I have messages. I have backups you forgot were shared." She shifted to threats like flipping pages in a playbook. "My friend says you can't do this. I'll get a lawyer. I'll take the kids. You're not the only parent here." "You're right," I said. "You're their mother. So act like it." She tried victim language next, softer, wounded. "I've been under so much pressure. You don't even see me anymore. You're always working." I felt alone. I kept my tone the same. "You didn't feel alone on the beach." That one hit. I heard it in the pause. The weak little silence where a lie tries to stand back up and can't. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want the kids protected," I said. "And I want this handled like adults." "So you're divorcing me?" "Yes. And you think you're just going to win custody because you're mad?" "I'm not mad," I said. "I'm prepared. Lawyers start today. Accounts stay frozen. Communication stays in writing. And one rule is non-negotiable." "What rule?" she said, voice tight. "The kids don't get dragged into this," I said. "No scenes. No speeches. Not using them to fix your image." She breathed like she wanted to scream. Then, smaller, "You're really doing this?" "I already did," I said. "You just haven't caught up yet." He wasn't hard to find. Men like him leave trails on purpose, social posts, tagged photos, business pages polished like resumes. Real estate guys survive on attention. It's their oxygen. And he had plenty of it. I didn't stalk him. I just looked at what he wanted the world to see, then matched it to what my files already showed me. 2 nights later, he was at a bar downtown. One of those places with dim lighting and expensive drinks that make average stories sound heroic. I parked a block away, walked in, and spotted him in under 10 seconds. He was in a booth with 2 other guys, laughing too loud. I heard my beach day come out of his mouth like a punchline. "Bro, her husband went psycho," he said, grinning. Like, full control freak. His friends laughed. He loved it. I walked over and stood there until the laughter died. Not aggressive, just a present. Men know what that means. He looked up, recognized me, and the grin stayed for a half-second too long before it got stiff. "Oh," he said. What's up, man?" I slid into the seat across from him without asking. Put my hands on the table. Still calm, still controlled. His friends looked between us, suddenly interested in their drinks. "You told that story wrong," I said. He let out a fake chuckle. "Look, she's a client." "Stop," I said, and he actually stopped, like his body understood something his ego didn't. I pulled one sheet of paper from a folder and laid it flat on the table between us. Not dramatic, just clean. It was a printed statement, dates, times, locations. Nothing emotional, just enough detail to make it clear I wasn't guessing. His eyes dropped to it. The color in his face changed a shade. "You've been seeing my wife," I said. "And you've been around my kids." He straightened up, trying to reclaim ground. "I don't know what she told you, but I don't care what she told me," I said. "I care what I can prove." That landed. His mouth opened, closed. He didn't like the word prove. Men like him rely on charm, not documentation. I leaned in just slightly, not a threat, just a boundary with weight behind it. "I'm not here to fight you," I said. "I'm here to draw a perimeter. You don't contact her in a way that puts you near my children again. You don't show up at parks, events, schools, anywhere." He scoffed weakly. "You can't." "I can," I said. "Because if you cross it, your name stops being a vibe and starts being a file." His brow tightened. "Are you threatening me?" "No," I said. "I'm informing you." I tapped the paper once, then slid it closer to him. "I have months of records," I said. "Messages, meetups, money movement that doesn't look good, especially when it overlaps with business. If this goes public, it's not a fistfight. It's licensing scrutiny. It's reputation. It's income." His throat bobbed. He tried to laugh again, but it came out wrong. "You're crazy," he muttered. I stood up. "I'm a father," I said, "and fathers solve problems." I left without touching him, because consequences last longer than bruises. The fundraiser was on a Thursday night. Upscale venues, high ceilings, silent auction tables laid out like altars. People dressed like success was a moral virtue. My wife's firm was hosting it. She'd mentioned it weeks earlier, back when she still pretended I was part of her life. I went anyway, not because I wanted her back, because I knew the kind of woman she was becoming. Someone who would burn the truth down just to keep her image warm. So I dressed right. Simple suit, clean watch, haircut. I walked in like I belonged there, because I did. 12 years of marriage earns you entry to the illusion you helped build. She saw me across the room and froze for half a second. Then she recovered, a smile snapping into place like a mask. "Hey," she said when I reached her. Her voice was tight, controlled. "I didn't think you'd come." "I'm here for the cause," I said. Neutral, polite, a man showing up with discipline instead of emotion. Her eyes flicked around the room, checking who was watching. That told me everything. We moved through the event like a couple in a brochure. Small talk, nods. I shook hands with people she wanted me to impress. I complimented the venue, asked clean questions, made no scenes. Then a senior partner, gray-haired, sharp-eyed, pulled me aside near the bar. "I've always admired you too," he said, voice low like it was a kindness. "Tough industry, long hours. How are you holding up with everything?" There it was. The door. My wife's head turned fast. She started to step in, a smile already forming. I beat her to it. "I appreciate that," I said, calm. "We're dealing with some financial irregularities and choices that are impacting the family. I'm handling it through proper channels." I didn't say anything. I didn't say betrayal. I didn't say anything that sounded like drama. I used the kind of language professionals understand. Controlled, precise, and impossible to ignore. The partner's expression shifted, sympathy fading into alertness. "Irregularities." I nodded once. "I don't want to make this an event conversation," I said. "But yes, it's serious enough that counsel is involved." My wife's face tightened, but she couldn't interrupt without making herself look guilty. She stood there smiling like her teeth were holding the whole mask together. The partner glanced at her, then back at me. "I'm sorry to hear that," he said carefully. "If there's anything, I'm keeping it contained," I said. "That matters to me. We have kids." That line did the rest. Kids change the math. It makes people pay attention without asking for details. I shook his hand and excused myself like I had nothing to hide, like I was simply being responsible. And I watched it happen, the moment my wife realized the narrative wasn't hers anymore. Not with a shout, not with a scene, just a controlled signal delivered early to the right person in the right room. By Monday morning, The story wouldn't be her husband is insecure. It would be something is wrong with her integrity. And that's the kind of rumor a marketing firm can't afford to ignore. She texted me the next day. Can we talk somewhere neutral? The lake house. Saturday. Please. Neutral was a lie. Please was a tactic. The lake house belonged to her uncle. It was where we'd taken the kids to fish, where she'd once leaned into me on the dock and said she couldn't believe we'd made it. It was also far enough away from town that she could stage whatever she wanted without witnesses. I went anyway, not hopeful, prepared. I arrived 10 minutes early, parked clean. I walked in with a briefcase and no anger on my face. The kind of calm that scares people who rely on chaos. They were already inside. Her, the boyfriend, and Dana. Loud friend, older, arms crossed like she was about to referee a trial she'd already decided. Support team. My wife stood up fast. Thank you for coming. Dana didn't bother with niceties. So what, you're trying to bankrupt her now? You can't just lock accounts and threaten people. The boyfriend smirked from the corner, acting like he was just there, like he wasn't poisoned in the room. I set the briefcase on the table and didn't sit still. I'm going to let you all talk first, I said. They did. Of course they did. Dana ran her mouth about control and abuse. The boyfriend tried to paint himself as a misunderstanding. My wife cried on cue, then got sharp when the tears didn't move me. It was a chorus of entitlement wrapped in therapy words. I waited until the noise burned itself out. Then I opened the briefcase. Folders. Labeled. Organized. Clean. I laid them out one by one like I was setting down weights. Financial records, I said, sliding the first folder forward. Transaction log and merchant list. I added second folder. Timeline with locations and message backups. Third, witness-friendly notes. Fourth, because yes, I'd already thought about how things sound in court. And settlement terms. Last folder placed dead center. The room changed. Not dramatically, just a quiet shift where confidence starts leaking out through the eyes. Dana's mouth closed halfway through a sentence. The boyfriend sat up straighter, suddenly aware he wasn't the main character anymore. My wife stared at the folders like she'd never seen consequences take physical form. You went through my stuff, she whispered. I reviewed shared systems, I said. Legally, carefully. Dana tried to recover. You can't prove. I slid one page out and turned it toward her. Clean summary. Dates, amounts, patterns. Enough to make denial feel stupid. Yes, I said. I can. The boyfriend stood up like he wanted to posture. This is harassment. I'm leaving. I didn't look at him. If you leave, you're out of the settlement conversation, I said. And then you're in the court conversation. Your choice. He didn't sit right away, but he stopped moving. The smirk died. I turned to my wife. Here's what's happening, I said, voice even. You repay what you took. You agree to custody terms that prioritize stability. And you agree to distance, real distance, from anyone who puts our kids near this. Dana snapped. You can't control who she sees. I met her eyes for the first time. I'm not controlling her, I said. I'm controlling access to my children. That shut her up. My wife's hands shook as she opened the settlement folder. She read, lips moving slightly. Her breathing got shallow. The reality of numbers and consequences doesn't care about empowerment slogans. Or, I continued, we go to court. I file with forensic accounting. I submit the digital evidence. I let a judge decide what irregularities mean. And if anything crosses into criminal exposure, I don't protect you from that either. Her eyes filled, but her face wasn't sad. It was terrified, because she finally understood. I wasn't here to win an argument. I was here to end a problem. Dana tried one last time, softer now. Let's just talk about this. We are, I said. This is the talk. The pen was on the table already. I placed it there before I opened the briefcase. My wife stared at it for a long time, like it was heavier than it was. Then she signed. Not elegantly, not proudly, Just a shaking signature that looked like the last breath of the life she'd been trying to live twice. I gathered the folders back into my briefcase, neat as I'd brought them. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I stood, looked at her once, really looked, and felt nothing romantic left to salvage. "Pack what you need," I said. "We'll coordinate through council." And I walked out of the lake house into clean air, not celebrating. Just moving forward, quiet certainty, steady steps, choosing stability over illusion, and building the next life around the only people in this story who never lied to me.
Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.